In any given utterance, there's a purpose. Something as simple as hello, greeting someone. It's more than just a word. You're acknowledging someone's presence. You're making a connection.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
I'm your host, Anna Melikian. I'm here to support you, increase your impact while preventing burnout. The Mindset Zone is a place to pause, increase your self-awareness, and embrace the experimentation mindset. Find more resources, including information about the Mindset Zone book and audiobook at mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. Today, we are exploring how finding your authentic voice is not just about words and articulation, but a holistic integration of mind, body, and breath. My guest, Dr. Leslie Gordon, brings unique insights from linguistics and voice coaching to help us understand how we can leverage our authentic voice, including our accents, to communicate more effectively. Welcome to the Mindset Zone, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's very good to be with you today.
And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I want to start with what you consider to be an authentic voice.
For me, the authentic voice is fully aligned in these three core areas. It's what's happening in your mind, it's what's happening in your body, and it's then what's happening with this specific speech mechanism. And it's the alignment of those three when they're all playing together that we are truly present, that we are most ourselves, and that our message is best received. I also like to note that authenticity is not about being perfect. It's genuine. More and more, we live in a time in humanity that authenticity is so important. We want to know what the other person is truly about. And when we perceive and receive a person through the act of speaking, we also want to enjoy that authenticity and that genuineness. So it's not about fitting a mold. It's not about sounding like someone else, imitating someone else that you might think speaks well, but rather finding that skill set within yourself through the alignment of those core areas that I've mentioned.
So let's go to that alignment. Speak us a little bit about, you said mind, body, and then the speech.
Yes. It's really a reversal of what most people think of as skilled speaking, because when one is seeking to communicate better, they're immediately thinking of what's coming from the speaking mechanism, right? What's coming out of my mouth. It's more than words. It actually begins in your mind. What's the end goal of your communication, right? Why are you doing this? What's the bottom line? And so, in any given utterance, there's a purpose. Something as simple as hello, greeting someone. It's more than just a word. You're acknowledging someone's presence. You're making a connection. You might be just asking about them with just a hi, how are you? There's a purpose for everything that we say. We don't often check in with our awareness of that purpose. We are such efficient speakers. We've developed the speaking skill over eons and eons. And so we don't really stop to think, why am I communicating in this moment? So there's that aspect of what's happening in the mind. There's also, and I believe where this is a lot of the work, is what is your value around what is in your mind and what you want to communicate? That's what is the value within you? What is your own belief about your message? But it's also what is the value that the other will receive by hearing from you and connecting with you? So knowing those components of mindset are foundational, really, to build up communication skill. The next piece would be what's happening in your body.
Let's for a moment pause here. I just want to unpack this first part a little before we move to the body, because I think this is one of the reasons why I thought this is ideal for the mindset zone. It's this mind connection. And yes, we are so used to produce the sounds, the speech, because it's part of as humans to communicate, that we don't think about the importance of the mind behind it. What is our intention behind it? So tell me a little bit more on how you work with people at that level.
It starts early. I Whether it's individually or with a group, the work is very important. As you might imagine, it's paced out differently if I'm working with an individual and working with groups. But we do draw, the work is about really raising awareness of what our potential intentions are in any given speaking act. And I tend to use the word speaking act because that's what these moments are, right? These moments of communication. And so it's an act of awareness raising, and it's playful and it's curious. So I might create some scenarios and I'll ask someone or I'll ask a group through prompts and probes. I'll ask, what is it that we're really getting at here? And sometimes the first answer is, it could be a right answer. It's an acceptable answer, but the more we dig and the more we dig, we realize that there's really a bottom line there. There's a thing we're after, and it might not be the first thing that comes to mind. So, like the greeting example, that's a fun one because everyone multiple times a day will greet someone, and the first answer I get when I give a scenario, what's happening here is, oh, you're just meeting someone. Okay, but what are you doing when you're meeting someone? You're saying hi to them. Okay, let's dig a little deeper. What's happening when you're saying hi to them? And that's through those probes and prompts we can get to the real truth of that speaking act, which is, this is someone that I'm glad to see, and I want them to sense my gladness, and I want to enjoy a connection with them in this moment. Or maybe it's another scenario. This is someone I've not seen for a long time and I've been concerned about their health. The way that I say hello in this moment will let them know I'm here for you. I'd like to talk to you and check on you. So, a very simple act can serve a very different purpose depending on the intention in your mind and then the way you realize it with your presence and your speech.
I love that because you are increasing our self awareness.
That's exactly it. So much work around speaking is about realizing what's happening in yourself so that you can be more effective in communicating and experiencing another.
Yeah, and the self awareness of what is our intention, where we are, our energy is. And that I think take us to the body because we are separating these in, mind, body, and speech. But like we say in the beginning, is holistic. So let's go to the body, focus on that perspective.
I have a colleague and a good friend. She's also in the speaking and accent space. And I'm borrowing a term from her, or a phrase from her, although I've used it enough, I think she'll let me just have it at this point. And she likes to say, speaking is energy made audible, meaning that the energy, the good energy that comes through when we really connect with someone or with a group of people as we speak is really a matter of sharing our physical energy, the energy of self, you might call it presence, and then having it be received. As humans, we are still very much in touch and very sensitive to the energy of other people around us. Now, some of us are very sensitive to that and very knowledgeable and aware of it on a moment to moment basis. Others have to make this realization and then work to realize it. But it is through our physical presence and our physical energy that, again, when aligned with our intention and our mindset, we can really affect another person. If you think about the person who is reticent to speak, reluctant to speak, fearful, full of self doubt, what have you, that's a person whose energy is probably inhibited to a good degree. And a lot of their body will show you that. They will take a certain physical stance that gives the signal of hesitation and reluctance. Their voice might be softer. Their vocal energy might be cast down rather than at the person in front of them. There are a lot of physical signs that we see and physical behaviors that we adopt depending on how we feel about our communication. Contrast that with a person who is open and engaged and ready to make a connection and very focused on the other person and sharing that value and exchanging that good energy. Their body looks different. Their energy level is different. Their facial expressions are different, and they are received in a very different way. And if this is a skill that you're developing, it does require practice and awareness and moving through these different physical states so that you can experience the difference and experience how it affects someone hearing you. And it's always such a beautiful light and bold moment working with people to take them from what might be their natural inhibited state to something more open, which is that's really the magic word, open to communication. And it's something that it's a state that creates a channel of sharing and exchange. And it's beautiful to see someone step into that new version of themselves.
I know that both of us admire the work of Patsy Rodenburg, and she
Yeah.
speaks exactly about one of the things that I had the luck, because it was really luck, to do a virtual workshop with her.
Mm.
And I thought that we were going to work on the voice because she's a very known voice coach. And we work the voice, but she absolutely starts with the body first. And she speaks about that you are referring if we are not in our voice, in our presence. So can you bring her work here? Because I know that is something that you use in your own work too.
I do. I'm so glad you raised our dear, mutually respected colleague, Patsy Rodenburg. She's such a giant in this work. And when I discovered her work, it really opened my eyes to, I think it helped me realize what I knew on a different level, but it put it so beautifully and created the imagery and gave me the steps to help integrate it into my work. And since then, it's always part of what I do. And she's defined a way of understanding presence. So, our human presence and how it affects others. And she has a book, it's called Presence. And if you could see my copy, it's wrinkled and worn and bookmarked. And it's time for a fresh copy because I've worn it out so much reading it and rereading it. But she explains that there are natural states of presence to each person. And because of a multitude of factors, life factors, the nurturing or lack of nurturing we might receive, adverse circumstances, many things that you might call to mind, we develop a preferred state of presence. So some of us, like in the cases I was describing earlier, some of us tend to be drawn into our own energy. So we hold our energy close to us. We share it, but in a limited fashion. We're careful who we give it to. We tend to put out only as much energy as is absolutely necessary, and we keep the rest very close to us. Others are all about putting their energy out into the world. They are reaching as many people as they can, near, far, everywhere. It's an energy that is quickly and easily felt, but it has some drawbacks as well. And then there is this space between. And that's the magic space where the person who's a little bit more reluctant can open up and find that freedom to be more present and be physically present and available in an expanded space. And where the person who's typically casting all that energy far and wide can bring it back a little bit so that it's reaching people in a more gentle, more easily received way. And that's really the magic space, and that's where we all want to operate for maximum connection and impact. She has a model that she describes as circles, the circles of presence. And I find, and this is what I found so magical, but because it's just such an easy concept to grasp. And the person who's the more reluctant speaker, keeping that energy close to self, that person exists in what she calls the first circle. And the person who's always putting the energy out is in a third circle. And it's that second circle between where we all want to operate to be successful communicators. And as I mentioned before about the body and how it changes states according to our levels of energy and our excitement or our reluctance to be in certain circumstances, perhaps. She also explains how the body reflects those circles of energy. So the first circle person is withdrawn, might have rounded shoulders, might gaze downward often, might stand to the side in an uncentered way. The third circle person has a big open body, maybe a chest that's thrust out to the world, looking forward, maybe even slightly up with the chin, bigger gestures. They're taking up more space. And then the second circle person, really, that body is one that exhibits balance throughout, not too much, not too little, centered, open, ready to give and to receive. And it's interesting because, and again, just another reason I love her model, you can use that model to understand what's happening in yourself, to look for the signs of the and the ways that you behave, and then to use them to make changes, right? Because I know that if I make this adjustment or that adjustment, my body's more open. I might be able to access more energy. Or if I'm in that third circle person dominating everyone and people are shying away from me, I'll know I need to pull some things back. It's also very useful for reading the people in your environment. And again, understanding that relationship between them and you. It's changed the way I understand certain relationships, even the ones I've had for a very long time. I now recognize people who are very dominant, they're third circle people, and I recognize that my response to them is to shrink back. And so I know that if and now you know me, Anna, so when you observe me not saying so much and sitting back, it's probably because there's someone in my environment that is a third circle person, and my choice is not to fight it. I don't fight against it. I'll sit back and I'll wait my turn. But if someone is in my environment that needs, oh, maybe I'll just call it a little waking up, maybe needs a little more inspiration, I might lean in a little more. I'll step into third circle to
Mhm.
engage someone, right? And I know how to do that with my body and my voice and my energy. So it really explains both sides of the equation, how you are as a speaker, how others are as listeners. It's beautiful.
And I love the connection because if we are aware of the intention of the communication, and then we are aware of our body and how to use our body to communicate, and that in the presence is our biggest power, then we can do it in an effective way. And we go to the speech part of it. That I want ask you to speak about with a specific angle, because yes, all of this is connected, but one of the thing of the speech, I think, is that everybody has a unique speak pattern. Some people, me included, we have a specific speaking pattern that people call an accent, because I was not born speaking English. My language, in my case of origin, my mother tongue is Portuguese, and my upbringing, everything create a certain accent. And this, I know that is an area where you have a ton of expertise and you help people. So tell us a little bit now, bring us to that with the angle of the accent.
Yes, speech. So I'll start a little bit just by speaking about speech more generally. And as I said earlier, it's often the thing that people think of first, right? How am I saying my words? Am I speaking too fast, too slow? Am I stumbling over my words? So people go to articulation, right, when they think of speech. But there's so much that influences articulation and speech patterns and rate. And to go back to what we were just saying, a lot of what's happening in your body and in your mind influence the way you deliver your words. So the more inhibited person might be slower in delivery because they're searching for both the confidence and the thought. But the other is true as well. You might speed up your message because you just want the moment to be over, right? So there are a lot of things that influence actually the way we physically, mechanically produce speech. In terms of accent, yes, this is my lifetime love. I've been fascinated with accents and languages since I was a very young girl and spent a lot of years learning language acquisition, language research, and teaching with a particular interest in language variation or accent. To get super detailed and nerdy about it, my expertise is in phonology, phonological acquisition, how we make sounds, what those sounds mean in terms of perception and production. But you can draw that out to how the varieties of sounds in our languages and our accents, how they influence the human experience. And that's the beautiful part of it for me because your accent is it's the sound map of your life. Everything that goes into your human experience in some way affects how you sound. You mentioned a mother tongue. Yes, we're born into environments where there is a dominant sound pattern. And we very early in life specialize to the sounds around us. So babies as young as 6 months of age focus on the sounds in their environment. We're born as universal perceivers. We have the potential to hear the difference between all sounds and to make meaning of them and produce them. But we take in the input of our immediate environment and we start eliminating sounds that are not meaningful and creating an inventory for our specific language and even accent. So with that specialization in place, that becomes our first pattern. In a monolingual environment, you're probably focused on one set of sounds, the way the people around you are producing them. If you are fortunate enough to grow up in a bilingual or multilingual environment, you have more sounds to process. You have more mental maps to create. But the brain is so good at specializing because it makes the work easier, right? that it is possible to create these multiple maps. So then that influences the way that you speak. You can make changes to an accent. We know from research and plenty of anecdotal evidence, I know everyone has the story of someone who, as a young person, moved and adapted their speech and or learned a language easily. But it's definitely not limited to the young. Accent acquisition, as I like to call it, or accent enhancement is possible at any age. It might take a little bit more work, but it is possible because it is a mechanical act. And yeah, I might draw the parallel here to any other physical skill that you would work on. You've never been a dancer, but at 50, you decide you want to learn to dance. Yes, it might take a little bit more work, but it's possible to make those changes and to grow your awareness and your perception. And so, accent to me is beautiful because it's an audible representation of your identity, which is why it is beautiful and also very responsible work. I've never worked with an accent client that doesn't, in some moment, have a realization that might lead to a conversation about what it means to change the way they speak. And often clients come to me because they've already had that realization, or maybe it's been suggested to them that they'd be more successful if they could make this or that change. It is a very personal decision to make adjustments to the way you speak. And there's a lot that goes with it. So my work with accent clients really does more than just make changes to vowels and consonants. We do a lot of that inner work that relates back to what we've been talking about in this podcast, your mindset around how you sound, what you are willing to try and what you don't want to try. It's about customizing the way you represent yourself and maintaining authenticity even while making changes and growing in a new way. You still want to be yourself. You want to have the anchor in what feels like you. And it's, as I said, beautiful, very responsible work.
And I love because, yes, a person like myself will say we have a strong accent because it's very audible that I was not born as English speaker, but even any language, if you are speaking if I'm speaking Portuguese, people identify an accent of a region, like here speaking in the United States, just by the way that the accent that we have speaking an American born person, depending of the place in the United States that they are born, they develop a certain accent that
Yes.
give us an identity. And that is the thing. Anything that has to do, I think, with our identity is our voice. And what you are saying is that there is this space that if we can become more self-aware, if we do the work, we can own our voice with more power and they have more choices. I'm interpreting correctly what you are
Yes,
saying?
you are. And in fact, you're saying a lot in a very concise way. It is about identity, how you feel about the way you speak, your willingness to adapt in different environments. And I can deliberate on that just a little bit more. We all do make adaptations. It's often a contextual change. You go spend some time in someone's presence and they're the type of person that makes you want to fluff up a little bit and sound a little bit more clear, professional, what have you. You make adjustments that you might not even realize you're making, but you do. So we all have that to a degree. We have that ability to make changes. But in making a change from even in your example, the regional, from this region to that region within the same country, you do it for specific reasons. It might be because you want to, how would I say, you might want to limit or reduce your native accent, even if regional native accent, maybe because of a perception that you want to go against. And this is where I can tell my own story. I was born in the southeastern region of the United States. It became clear to me very early that there are negative connotations around being a speaker of Southern English. And it's often considered, Southern speakers are considered less intelligent. And that became clear to me at an early age. And as I moved through my education and moved from region to region in the United States, I tried to hide that part of my identity. And so I changed my speaking patterns, tried to go for something a little more general. It was really only a few years ago that a good friend and a mentor challenged me on that and asked me why I would want to hide part of my story. And so now I give myself more grace for my native sounds coming out from time to time. So whether you're changing from the sound of one region to another, or if you're working through multiple inventories because you speak multiple languages, there is a reason for that change. Now, sometimes that reason is what I've described before. There's a compelling reason you feel you need to change. But there is also the type of speaker who just wants to see how on target they can be. Can they really blend and be taken as a speaker from another place? And that's part of my story as well for languages I've acquired. I always wanted to sound native. I wanted to pass as native. So I was the one who was, if you think about the language class experiences that you might have had, I was the kid that would spend extra hours listening over and over again and practicing the pronunciation when everyone else was moving on to something they thought was more interesting because I really wanted to pass as whatever. And I changed accents through the years. I would associate myself with certain people, maybe go travel and live in certain places, and I'd want to be all in on that accent. And then a few years later, I'd be in another circumstances and I'd want to fully immerse myself and pass in that place. And in doing so, though, I did face exactly what I've described. I had to decide if I sound this way, it means those people over there are going to have a different impression of me. And then when the next time I changed, I thought, gosh, I really like that sound. Now I'm leaving it behind. How do I feel about that? Because it was a layer of that identity that I was forming. And I think that anyone who goes through the process of accent adjustment or accent enhancement at some level will confront that question. How does this make me feel about me? And how does it make me feel about the context that I'm immersing myself in at the moment?
And I love this because this shows and really why you are so good at this and how you are so good teaching and helping people with this, because you have this rich personal experience and nerdiness around it that allow you to have the practice, to have the conceptual models to help people about it. And I could be speaking hours and hours, but we have to start to wrap up. So where people can learn more about you and your work?
I can give my website, which is very simple, lesliegordonspeech.com. And I probably the best way to see what interests me moment to moment is on my Instagram, and that's leslie.gordon.speech. And I talk about a number of things in that format: confidence, effectiveness, energy for speaking. I do some of the accent content. I just try to bring it all together in that space because these are different layers of the communicative skill. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
I will make sure that all those links go in the show notes.
Thank you.
And you also speak on these things. From in your website, people can go if they want to bring you as a speaker or to train or to help a person or to help a group of people. Is your website the place to
Yes,
go?
that's the best place to send me a quick message. I do love to speak on accents as part of the human experience and to be in the room on site training people, virtual training, of course, but as you might not be surprised to hear me say, that energy exchange in the room when we're talking about speaking is always a lot of fun. So I love to go do on-site trainings, and not specific to accent, but confident speaking, effective speaking, learning those levels of presence and effectiveness and maintaining authenticity is a lot of fun to me. So yes, I do that as well.
Love it. So thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
today.
Such a lovely time. Thank you so much.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
If you can think of a person who will find this episode helpful, please share it. Spreading the word about the Mindset Zone podcast is very powerful. For extra resources, including information about the book and audiobook, Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Human Potential, go to mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. As always, I'm so grateful that you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.